And good morning.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
we got some, we have some travelers, some this morning, Steve from Florida, Jeff from Philadelphia, and thanks for joining in. We said right before we connected, Zoom is here to stay. Zoom in some form is here to stay. How to go back and adapt a live presentation and is all that is yet to come. Still kind of pondering that. I think given the current pandemic situation that we're in right now, I don't think it's good timing to go back to the Moot House to a live situation. It's too problematic. Um, and so, but I think many of us would like to go back and have coffee face to face.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of hope for that.
It's out of the blue. Darren Fred, our pastor, got COVID. It's Laramie County for some reason is a hot box right now.
Yeah, and I've heard that the resources are actually maxed out right now. So
At the highest hospitalization count for COVID ever since the whole thing started
yeah, that's a lot of challenges right now.
in the
So,
county.
well, we got Zoom, and so let's enjoy this. We're studying the Gospel of John, and we're just going to look at one verse this morning, verse 33. And just to tie it in with what we've looked at, 31 and 32, last time Jesus said, to those who believed, he's at this crowd in the temple. The timing is right around the Feast of Booths, and it says some believed. And then he said, and if you remain to be my disciple, you will continue in belief. The idea of continuance in belief, and as you continue in belief, you will truly be my disciples. Really a botched job on the verse, but that's what he was saying. And he says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That amazing verse. Well, we're going to look at here the crowd's response to that invitation this morning. This is just a review from last time, stating just what I just said. And then he says, we continue through his discipleship. Discipleship is following him. And really, he's talking about moment by moment, day by day choices to follow his word. He that follows my word is truly my disciple. His word has everything to do with a letting go. When we think of his word, we all have images in our head, what he's talking about. And I want you to know what I'm thinking about. And that is about this whole idea, this call of letting go. I think that is core to Jesus's teaching and what is really holding the crowd back, and the big rub in this book. And this letting go always feels like dying. Thus the language of the scriptures. His offer is to all. He's very inclusive. I have seen that now in 8 chapters. Unless something changes, I would vote yes, Jesus is very inclusive. And then we discussed about that text last week. So that's a rough, quick overview from last week. Now, 8:33, it says one verse, I'll read it. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants. They come back right away, stating who they are, and have never been enslaved to anyone. Emphasis, my emphasis. How is it that you say you will become free? Okay, that's the verse we want to look at. Now, for you wine drinkers and enjoying a great glass of wine, and those of you who've kind of watched and been maybe trained or so forth, but first thing you do is you take it. When you go to the restaurant, as being a male, they always come to you with the bottle first, and there's a protocol, and you hold the glass by the stem and they pour it, and you're supposed to twirl it and nose it. When you smell it, you nose it. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking at the nosing notes, and then you look at the maitre d' or the waiter, and then you say, sure, that's real good. Let's go with this bottle. So I've kind of playing on that this morning is at first first look at this text, these are the things that I'm nosing from this text. First notes, the notes in the text. Well, I first note is this verse is in response to Jesus's what I would call a thrilling offer. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. He is offering these folks freedom. Something every human being wants, that's innate within our being. It's a thrilling offer. And this response is in relation to that offer. Well, I see defensiveness. I smell defensiveness as I twirl my glass. I think this whole verse is about defensiveness. There's quickness to bolster. Their first words out of their mouth is to try to bolster their position and their inheritance, Abraham's descendants. They are standing firm on that, and they are quick to respond with that fact. I view this, I'm swirling the glass, and what I'm smelling is this crowd is absolutely closed, using closed language. There is no invitation for dialogue. They are, as I become uncomfortable in conversation, I will tend to look for books to pick up or anything to get the monkey off my back. I am closed and I want to quit talking about it. And I see the crowd is responding in that manner as well. No open dialogue. I would call this grandiose denial. We have never been enslaved to anyone. Where is your head? My goodness. They're certainly not dealing with their past in a healthy and productive manner. Sure, there is a spiritual aspect of this. And Jesus is talking also about a spiritual freedom, regardless of political status. However, I think that these guys here the crowd is bypassing the engagement of that reality and utilizing denial in their whole praise. We have never been enslaved to anyone, and that's ludicrous. Posturing themselves to fight back. So I would look at my first nose, and the way that I interpret this verse is, as you see on the screen, very one-sided and very defensive in their response. I see summary resistance, and I see that resistance based from a very fragile position, very fragile. And that's what we're going to look at. Now, I've been using language that's new to me, relatively new, as I'm grappling and having all kinds of fun trying to discover here and looking and reading and studying and just having a whale of a good time. And I'm always looking for illustrations that depict where at least my head is. And so I can relate that to you. And I came up with this idea. And so we're going to pause for a moment, and we're going to look at when I use words like true reality, one reality, what is and what is not. All of you, we're all trying to understand this, and all of you have images in your head. So I want to share with you an illustration that I came up this last week that really depicts at least my position, where I'm coming from, and then you guys can, adopt it as if it's helpful or not. We've got the model, and we're going to continue to use the model. This model is not complete. This model is like an onion, and it shows 3 layers, the outer 3 layers divided by a black thick line. I'm going to talk about that. And then the center point is left undone. Well, it is done, but it's not done as far as our study, because I'll reveal those layers as the text bears out. In my model that I teach, Dave Brown is aware of this, that I believe there are 7 layers, and these layers are layers of transformation. And what would be helpful in you understanding how I think is that Jesus is always speaking at the center of transformation, the center layer, the bullseye. And if you think about this bullseye as being true reality, I love the analogy that C.S. Lewis uses is in his book, The Great Divorce. When the folks get off the bus in heaven from earth, they step out on the grass and it goes through their feet, because in heaven is true reality, and the grass is penetrable. You know, these folks are fragile. They're like ghosts, and they are in the process of in the story, they're on a journey, which is a transformative process. And so if you think of the bullseye, Jesus's position, he says, I and the Father are one. He is always talking in a one-to-one correspondence with the Father, and he is always in the center. So in our model, think of a ball that is like an onion, and in the center where Jesus is speaking from is true solidness. Think of absolute solidness. What is? So when I use the word what is, I'm thinking in terms of truly solid. It has true, absolute, 100% substance. Whereas on the outer layer, as we move out, and to what degree, we're not going to talk about that. But as we get out on those 3 outer layers, and right, the audience is generally operating from somewhere here. These 3 outer layers on the outside of the dark circle, that is vapor. Vapor is real, but it doesn't have much substance. Now I'm thinking of a contrail, and I was wondering the other day, why do we see contrail? You know, the contrail, the jet stream, or not? It's not the jet stream. It's the exhaust from a jet. Sometimes you see that, and sometimes you don't, and it has to do with temperature and humidity. That when the jet, the exhaust is a given, but at some times, given the proper temperature and the proper humidity, sometimes we can see the contrail, the stream, and it goes across the sky, and it's there for a while, and it's real, but it dissipates. It's vapor. And that's when I use the term what is and what is not, I'm thinking of contrail. I'm thinking that, yes, it seems real at the time, but it dissipates because it has no substance. So when I use the term fragility, fragile, not real, this is how my mind is thinking. Vapor. These folks here and elsewhere in the book, as Jesus is dialoguing, I think this is the main disconnect. They're operating from a contrail perspective, whereas Jesus is operating and representing what is truly solid, what is truly real. That little illustration has really helped me, and I hope it's helpful to you. So the audience, whoever the audience is here and elsewhere, I think we're going to see most of what we're going to see in John. I haven't studied the whole book yet. Just a minute, Bill. I'm going to finish this and I'll get that question. They're operating from layers 1 through 3. Layer 1 has everything to do with security, food, shelter, and water. And there's a positive aspect of that. We all need that as human beings. But in relation to the leaders, they're taking that and applying it in a destructive kind of way because they look at Jesus as a threat. He's threatening, in their minds, he's threatening their security. So they're operating and responding negatively out of layer one. Layer two has to do with belonging. Belonging is love. We all, as human beings, need to be loved, and we love. But in this case, the remaining of the crowd could be identifying, who do we adhere to? What is the right group? And this unhealthy approach to belongingness has created, 40,000 denominations in the religious realm. It's rampant in the religious realm to be right and to be part of the right group. Layer three has everything to do with power and the utilization, both in a positive, creative sense and a negative sense. So Bill, what's your question?
Regarding the crowd, I'm trying to follow who they are, because I go up earlier and Jesus talks about when you've lifted up the Son of Man, you get to verse 35, it says, even as he spoke, many believed in him. Then the next verse, 31, says, to the Jews who had believed in him, he says, if you hold my teaching, you'll know me free. And then it says, they answered him. And I assume the they is to the Jews who believed in him. So up to this point, it seems we're dealing with a friendly crowd. And then suddenly we keep on going, they get into the Abraham argument, and then they say, we're not illegitimate children. And by the end, they're, aren't we right? You're demon possessed. So I'm kind of puzzled as to, is the crowd shifting or what's going on here?
Well, there's certainly, I don't think it's really clear, because we've got the Jews and we got the scribes and Pharisees, and we have the Jews, it switches, and now we're at the Jews. I don't know if it is that important to distinguish between who is actually talking. I think it's a mixed crowd, and they're all involved as part of the festival. Some are believing, some are not, but the jury is out. They're trying to, they're trying to understand this. And in this case, I'm, for what it's worth, I'm interpreting 33 as a pretty negative defensive response.
Yeah, me too, because 31 says, to the Jews who believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching. That sounds like an intimate conversation of those who are on his side, and he's trying to explain something to them, but it shifts in 33.
Yeah, well, there's some that believed in him, but then he says, and continue to believe in me through doing, following my word. That's when he gets the negative feedback.
Yeah.
So I would tend to group it all together.
Okay.
We got it in our heads here that once you believe, it's, the lights come on and you see it all. It's not, I don't see that here. I see pushback. That belief is more of a process, basically about dying to yourself.
Right. I'm just going to the old ones where he'd tell a parable to the crowd, then he'd get his disciples around him and explain it to his close intimates, Yeah, and I'm trying to follow that, but yeah, okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah. So the crowd is in the vaporware, they and me, much of my life is in vapor. And this is where I get real and unreal. And this interplay between those two ideas is amazing. I mean, it really, and guys, the reason we're doing this is not to tickle our fancy by any means. I think we would have quit years ago, but I see that this book, I see the intent of the New Testament, the intent of this whole thing is transformation. It's allowing the Spirit of the living God to transform me. And it's a lifelong process. And so this is about how I can understand me, and this is how I can understand other people, where they're coming from, so I can help them in their transformational process. It's kind of simple, but it's really applicable here to my world, right here, 520 South Washington. This is very applicable and really exciting. So we got what is and what is not. So to experience, this is Jesus's general call to all. To experience what Jesus is offering, which is new life. And his constant invitation, one has to move him or herself. And I'm using the word experience and all that because it's day-to-day practical life. We have to move our day-to-day experience through this major barrier. I think he's talking about one major barrier, but yet there's more involved with it. The major barrier is a letting go. And this is where the problem is this inability to hold on, or this ability, this propensity rather, to hold on to what we think is true and not let go. And that is a major barrier in people coming to believe. And but once we let go, and that only comes through trust in Christ. We do it once, we learn how to, just like riding a bike, we learn how to do it more and more. And that's what should depict our lives as we start to age. We learn how to die to ourselves. And we know what it looks like in me, and we know what it looks like in those around us. And it always feels like dying. So, but here's the but. We humans tend to respond like this. As you and I approach, or as the crowd approaches this dying, God, this fear wells up. It's too scary. I can't let go of what I believe, whether it's pride or fear, it's fear of some sort. So I bounce off, and I do that through self-compensation. And guys, that's exactly how I interpret Genesis chapter 3, that when the man and the woman ate, they compensated for what they did by creating fig leaves. They self-compensated. Right now, or at that point, they were no longer acceptable in their own eyes. They became the accusers. They became accusers of themselves. And in so doing, they self-compensated through the sowing of the fig leaves. That is a mouthful. Accusation, self-accusation leads to all kinds of things. And I think this is the root human problem right here. On one slide, it really shows where my head is at and how I'm viewing this interaction with Jesus in the crowd. So we're going to come back and refer to this many times in many ways. So I share that with you because I hope it's helpful. Now, 33a, we're going to dissect this verse in A, B, and C. The crowd's response, and they quickly respond is, I looked at the nosing notes, quickly, we are Abraham's descendants. They quickly state who they are, their heritage. The crowd views their own heritage. How the crowd views their heritage is absolutely true. It's solid. It's part of that core. Not once does Jesus criticize this truth. However, on at least 2 occasions, he does provide counsel in regard to their perception of this truth. Now, could one of you turn to Matthew 3:9 and read it, and then another one turn to Luke 3:8? That'll keep me from having to switch around here. And we're going to look at, I know these are 2 that talk about this very inheritance. We're talking about truth, and we're talking about perception of the truth.
I've got 3:9.
Okay, Matthew 3:9. Could you read that, Bill?
Well, John the Baptist is talking, and he says, "Do not think you can say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. I tell you that out of these stones, God can raise up children for Abraham."
Okay. Do you, I've had a little more time to think about it, but do you want to comment on that before I do?
Well, John the Baptist is laying the path for a new way. And he says that God creates Abraham's children, and it's not a biological lineage, it's a faith lineage.
Yeah.
Although biology has something to play in it. I mean, there's a reality there, but he's changing the rules.
They view themselves as in the inner circle, Abraham's seed, Abraham's descendants. And John is saying, not so fast, guys. God is able to create Abraham's seed from these stones. You know, it's bigger. And there's a propensity in our human nature to think in terms of inner circle and outer circle. And we are in because we are part of Abraham's seed. We're in, we're safe, we're doing the right things. And John the Baptist saying, not so fast. Yeah.
Well, and I'm a little confused here because going up a little farther, people were coming to John, confessing their sins. They were baptized in the Jordan River. Then it says, well, when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to where he's baptizing, my question was, were they coming to be baptized or were they coming to be observers?
Bill, I don't know, but some were baptized, and that baptized was an identification with John's message of repentance.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know their motive.
And
What about Luke 3:8? Does somebody have that?
Yeah, I got it. It says, produce fruit in keeping with repentance, and do not begin to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. For I tell you that out of these stones, God can raise up children for Abraham.
All right. Well, it's a similar situation, similar context, but again, it's the idea of exclusivism and entitlement, of guarantee. I do this. I'm part of this, so I'm in, and the rest of the world is out. And in this case here, not so fast. So that I'm showing as counsel not to disvalue the fact that they are Abraham's descendants, but the fact is how their heads are thinking what that means in relation to that.
I carry on really, what's interesting to me here is this is not a discussion over we are Moses' offspring. This is a discussion over we are Abraham's offspring. He leaps over the law.
And what? I didn't hear that.
They seem to be both of them seem to be leaping over the law as an issue.
Leaping over the
Moses was the law.
Well, yeah, Abraham before Moses. Abraham, yeah, I think I don't know this, Bill, but I would guess that their minds are thinking back at the great promise out of Genesis chapter 12.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. That they, when it get right back to the root, they're Abraham's descendants. So they're, God likes them better. They wouldn't say that, but that's kind of it. A person's heritage is of great value. This is true because it's important to that person. That's what makes it important. To embrace one's heritage is to help bring definition in how that person can live their day-to-day life. I'm basically stating the value of knowing one's heritage, of why that's important to us. And it's important to us because it teaches us how to live daily. To embrace one's heritage is to serve as an informing and freeing agent. It should lead us to freedom. However, and oftentimes we see it functioning as a binding agent within a person's life. For example, self-compensation. What is true of our heritage is this, so therefore this is true. And that's where the error is. And this is what we're going to see demonstrated in 33. So they answered him, B. We're going to go into that a little bit further. Part B says, and have never been enslaved to anyone. We are this, and we've never been enslaved. Their Part B response reveals how the crowd thinks in regard to their heritage. Number one, because of their heritage, they view themselves as guaranteed or entitled this freedom. They are therefore, from their perspective, in no need of what Jesus has to offer. If you think you're free, then there's no need. He that is well need not a physician, but he that is sick, Jesus said. Same idea. If they're free, they don't need what Jesus has to offer. Their perception forces them to reinterpret, here we go, their corporate history in some manner, which denies the true facts of their governing status as a people. The reality, they've been under foreign bondage since the Babylonian captivity in 580, before 586. And, for hundreds of years, all they know is slavery. And they deny that point blank. I'm looking at denial. If they embrace that reality and then talk about freedom, that's a different story. That's where Jesus is coming from. But they're denying it, almost bolstering themselves up against it. And it creates all kinds of problems. And they do that through a reinterpretation of the past. Thus, we observe self-imposed guaranteed state of being, Abraham's seed, Abraham's descendant. They created that in their heads. Vaporware, it's in their heads. And that led them to a denial of the true facts. Because they view themselves as free and entitled, they have to do something with the past. So they have to reinterpret it to fit their model. And there's where denial comes in. They answered and said, and now it said to him, we are Abraham's descendants. We have never been enslaved. How is it? So they raised the question to throw it back to Jesus. How is it that you, Jesus, say you will become free? They view themselves as free already. Thus, we observe the crowd's counter question back to Jesus. In so doing, we can further understand how they're thinking. And so now I've taken that little diagram and kind of grown it a little bit. Self-imposed guaranteed state of being. Now the centerpiece is a forced reinterpretation of their corporate past. They're doing it. They're coming in. That's why I keep saying it's not real, because they're manufacturing it in their heads. But to them it's real, but it's not real. And it results in a gross denial of the true facts. Bondage for 400 years. Hey, what about the Romans, guys? And then the concluding matter is that because of their forced interpretation, reinterpretation, their forced denial, they live currently in a skewed view. They live in the vapor world that they've created. And I'm calling it, rather than vapor, I'm saying skewed. This example right here is how I think we humans, for various reasons, create falseness in our heads and then operate day to day under this self-created delusion. Guys, we all have stories. I mean, I've got stories of me living in a falseness of how, whatever it is, really big in religious realms. And it's just not true. It's a state of delusion. And that's where these people are. So now I've got some comments on this after we've gone through the text. We've suggested previously the responders to Jesus are filtering all they hear and say through fear-based lens. And I'm saying one or two. They're coming from layer one if they're fearful about Jesus infiltrating the temple and affecting their position in society, Jesus being a threat. They're from layer two if they're looking for who to believe in. which is not wrong, but it has a negative effect of belonging to the right thing. And there is where the human nature can go south pretty quickly. By examining their response in this manner, it helps us to understand the why behind their thinking and their question. Please note all filtering, and I'm calling what they're doing is filtering. And I've got this long, multiple ways to explain it. Fear-based. I think it's fear-based. It's binary, 1 or 0, and it's untransformed. Untransformed thinking is layers 1, 2, and 3. The big, we're going to look at this right in here. This is and this is, in my opinion, where much of society is coming from. Security issues, belonging issues, and power issues. It's all derived from the false self. False meaning it's not real. It's something I manufacture. It has very little substance, like a contrail. The only substance is what I give it or what the crowd gives it, and therefore extremely fragile. That's why the emotion in the text, they're coming from a very fragile place, so they have to defend themselves. They have to dig their heels in because of it being so fragile. So what filtering looks like, I've got 4 things here, then I'm talking way too much. What filtering looks like. Before we do this, any comments on this?
Yeah, Mike, one thing that came to mind for me was an AA meeting. Okay, so one of the things they have to do right up front is say, hey, I'm Jeff, I'm an alcoholic. Until they get to that point, they are in denial, like you said. They're coming from a vapor state, basically saying, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have a problem. I don't need to be free of this. Until they see the truth and they say, hey, I'm an alcoholic. Then they don't, that begins the process of being able to be helped and be set free. So that's the kind of the example I see in this is they are at an AA meeting with Jesus and they're denying that they are lost.
That is so true what you just said. So AA, I am Mike Hadorf and I am an alcoholic. That is right here. They transcend that barrier. And the fruit of that barrier, and we're going to learn about this, is where AA, their step 1 is my step 4. I'm giving us a little more grace. They say, you got to get to this step here. I'm an alcoholic. And then you can build on it. I call it not embracing, including the negative. And that's what these folks have not done. The human tendency, Jeff, is to resist the negative. We do it through our whole lives. And that's what keeps us doing the same thing over and over up here. This inability to include the negative. We don't, I use the term include very carefully because it has to be part of it. I am an alcoholic. Now I have some room I can move. I can move towards transformation. Very good. Yep. That's exactly correct. Any other comments on that?
I'm thinking, as you're doing this, my mind is spinning with all the recent political and doctrinal stuff around, not the evangelical church, but they call it the white evangelical church.
Yeah.
And we have that label pretty strong because, it started in Rome, which is somewhat white. Then we were children of the Reformation. That's Germany. That's clearly white. And then we're offsprings of Britain and a lot of that stuff. And that, your brethren thinking is very white. And now we're American white. And being white Christian somehow anchors us into the correct Christian thinking. And I think we're losing people by the droves right now because we have that adjective, whether spoken or unspoken, on the top of everything that's going on right now politically.
It could be. I know, yeah, we could talk about our responses. It's confusing, very confusing to me. Dave, what is your comment? You got,
Well, I want to go back a minute to Bill's earlier question about this section from about 30 on through 33, where early in those verses, many believed in him, and then there's this question came up where they began arguing with him. I don't see any discontinuity in those verses. That order of things expressed in those verses is exactly what we're talking about here, where we're given this gift and we say that we accept and we believe, but then the first time something comes up that's contradictory to the basis of that belief, we say, no, wait a minute.
yeah,
And that's what's happening with these group of people that he's talking to here. So they did believe, but then when he starts saying about, it will make you free, immediately their flag goes up. No, wait a minute. I'm
yeah,
already free. So
yeah,
these verses really are just a good example of the whole battle that's being described here of letting go of what we think we have to hang on to.
oh, that
I
very,
like that.
very well said, Dave. Very well. Yeah. Comments on that?
Well, yeah, I saw in this story a bunch of people whose heads are nodding, the whole time Jesus is talking, and then he says this, and the head nods stop, and we find ourselves, I think these days, sometimes you're agreeing with somebody, what somebody's saying, because it fits our worldview, and then they say something that no longer fits our worldview, and we stop shaking our heads, and our first thought is, wow, this guy's off in left field. I can't believe anything he says
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where they've gotten themselves to, that they were believing, they were starting to believe, and then all of a sudden he says this, and they go, oh, that is so wrong. And I now have to discount everything else he's said. And I can't believe this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're saying of them is so true of me. Much of my experience in life has been like that. The hero worship. Well, so-and-so believes that means it's safe for me to believe it too. Well,
I'm
it's
struggling with
that's
the
not
idea that we're
wrong,
free.
but it's no basis.
I'm struggling with the idea of being free. I think they knew the rule over them, but I think their sense of freedom was looking forward, that our forward future belongs to the fact that we're Abraham's children. And Jesus comes to him and says, your future, to be free, does not belong to that, it belongs to me. And so I don't think they were denying the fact they're under, but I think they were leaning on the fact that Abraham's children, there was a promise of God that eventually they would come into their own redemption, if you will.
Dave, I look at it as a great example of entitlement. They thought I'm using that word in and out. We're part of it. We're in the right. We're doing the right thing. But where the rub is, he's saying it's day by day, moment by moment, and it has everything to do with learning how to let go. You can't have this kind of language to people who think they've already arrived. Hey, we're there. What are you talking about? Why do you tell us you need to become free? We're already free. And we look at it 2,000 years later, and we go, you guys are nuts, man. You're not free. Well, I think there's a great teaching for us here, for me here. Yeah.
You think they got different free from what paradigms going on? I mean, one's thinking politically free,
Right,
and the other's, internally free.
right.
So they're saying, we're not subject to anybody. We live in a community, a subset of Rome. We live within our community. and we're rulers of our community within our community. And I'm free to do whatever they let me do, you know. But Jesus is going a little deeper, I think, and saying, that's not the freedom I'm talking about. You know, the when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're tormented by the prisons of your thoughts, and you're telling me you're free? You're not free. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You can get up and have coffee in the morning when you want. That's free.
Yeah.
I guess, if that's what you want to limit freedom to. But I'm a little going a level layer down here.
That is another really good, astute observation. We're going to look at that I'm kind of working ahead a little bit, and I've got a slide that shows that, because what kind of freedom are we talking about? And sure, you can be free and live in political bondage. You know, history is filled with that. It has something to do with our externalities, but not everything. I think Jesus and the crowd are both talking about a freedom that exists outside of externalities. The difference, Vince, the difference is that these folks are rejecting it. They haven't gone through here, like Jeff was talking about. They have not included the fact that they have been in political bondage for over 400 years. They have rejected, they fight that idea like we humans do. And that is the deciding factor. Jesus is teaching the contrary. There needs to be an inclusion of that. Then we can move. Just like Jeff said, my name is Mike Hadorf and I am an alcoholic. You know, my name is Mike Hadorf and I'm a slave to the Roman government. And I'm supposed to believe in a God who's gonna deliver me, you know, kind of thing. You really get honest with it, then we can do something. Yeah. Bill.
You know, it's interesting. It's like Dave Brown reminds us, we need to go from doing to being. But if you follow this down a ways, you're going to get to the point where he says, if you were Abraham's children, you would do what Abraham did.
Yeah.
And because they said, he's going to try to kill me. He said, well, you're nuts. But basically, Jesus calls their doing into question, and they're trying to lift on their being. So it kind of flips the argument we've used
Interesting.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And then we got Satan. Then we got Satan coming up, and I got to talk about it. Yeah, John, what are your thoughts?
Well, you made a comment earlier. You said a skewed view of their current state of being. So these people are thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a good Jew. I'm John, and I'm a good Jew. And, you know, yeah, you may say we're in bondage, but we're not in bondage, like Vince was saying. So as it applies to us, which I think it really does. So here we got a group. We got Bob Powell, you know, good Presbyterian, and Steve, he's a good brethren, and Vince, he's a good Catholic, you know, and Dave, he thinks we're all crazy. We need some more Jewish roots in our faith, and so forth, right? So they're holding on to it, and we make it personal, but their identity of who they are. See, in the Western world, it's very me, right? It's all about me. But in their world, their identity, who they were, was good Jews, right? We are good Jews, and that's why we are in. So this Jesus says, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And like Jeff's saying, that just doesn't compute. You know, I'm an alcoholic. Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just I like my alcohol. I'm not an alcoholic, right? So the question is, you know, do we have a skewed view of our current state of being?
Yeah.
And if you had a choice, and it's binary, but if you have a choice, you either hold on to your paradigm, to your religion, or follow Jesus, which one would you choose?
Well, it's
Follow
always,
Jesus.
Depends on which one's easier.
I don't know,
Well,
man. It's like saying letting go of your religion. Oh, no. This is craziness, right? And of course, you're going to say both, but that's not a choice, right? You got to choose one or the other, because that's kind of what Jesus is doing, right? He's shaking them to the core. This thing you believe in, right? That you got your whole worldview built on, your faith. I'm going to shake it up a little bit, like a whole lot. And he says, either follow me, right? Or,
Well, and John, one thing I thought about is you said you got to hold on to your paradigm or follow Jesus. Part of our problem is that our paradigms because we think they're right.
absolutely.
Right.
I'm right.
So
I know
I'm
you're
right.
not.
I don't
You don't
have to
think
let
like
go
me.
of
I'm right. You're wrong.
That's right. I don't have to let go of my paradigm to follow Jesus because my paradigm is right. And what Jesus is saying to these people is your paradigm is wrong. And we, on occasion in our lives, have to really take a look and say, hey, just because I'm a Baptist doesn't mean I'm right. Just because I'm umpty-ump doesn't mean I'm right. What I have to do is continue, like Mike said, on a daily basis to search out what is right and to say to myself every day, I'm an alcoholic. Therefore, this is how I need to react or respond to that statement.
yeah.
And that's the way I have to look at my own life is too many times I compare myself to others and I say, I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as John White is or whatever. I don't do this. So therefore I'm okay. We have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I am a sinner. And without the blood of Christ, I am lost. And that is that daily, like Mike said, getting through those few layers and dying to self every day and letting go so that I can embrace my only hope, which is Christ.
It's,
There was a essay put out. I can't remember his first name. His last name was Moore. He used to be president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and he left the Southern Baptist Church. And
Russell
Moore, and he presented an essay to All Things Plow magazine, which is an interesting group. But in it, he's talking about the exodus of younger people from the Evangelical Church, and in his case, Baptist Church, but a lot of similar ones. And his analysis of it wasn't that they don't want anything with God, is they don't believe the church really believes their own stuff and is not living according to it, and they want nothing to do with it. I thought that was quite a condemning essay. It was interesting.
let me butt in here. We tend in our heads, we go theological, belief, Baptist. I heard the word Baptist, Presbyterian and all that. And that certainly comes into play here, or Russell Moore, and no criticism whatsoever. But guys, I'm just feel like I'm on the beginning to understand this at 67, what this means daily. And let me give you a story. Last Saturday, my dear wife got tickets to go see the Denver Brass at a church in Denver do a performance. And we went down there and like many of our marital relationships, you've got one that's 10 minutes early and one that's right on time, or, whatever. We have a different perception of when to leave. And, we're trying to work it out, but, it seems like after 40 some years, we could be better at it. But I am very conscientious about being on time. And my wife is never late, but her view is different than my view. Well, it ended up with what time do we need to leave and all that. We agreed upon it. I thought we had agreed upon it. And we didn't quite make what we thought. And I'm watching Google, Google Drive or Google Maps. And I'm watching it go on and it's updating as I-25 is getting more packed. It's getting more congested, and we're going to be later and later. We haven't even, we haven't left yet. And, and so my stress level is going up, and I start to blame, where are you? And, where, I start getting upset. And so I'm catching myself. This is what this means. I start thinking, relax. It is what it is. My dear wife is here. We're here to have a wonderful afternoon together, to enjoy this concert together. And worst cases, we walk in a little late. I'm not going to blame. That's crazy. Why would I destroy a beautiful thing like this? Now, in my earlier days, guys, I wouldn't have done that. I would have figured out how to, in a nice Christian kind of way, rub her face in the dirt. I'm so religious. And guys, this was wonderful. We got down to I-25 and there was an accident. Oh, now we're going to be, we're close to 30 minutes late, according to Google Drive or Google Maps. It updates. And I'm just saying, just relax. I said, I told Sandra, everything inside of me wants to blame, and I refuse to do that. Or to get upset. I didn't say blame, because she would have been her. It's not my wife. I would have said, I said, everything inside of me wants to be anxious, but just relax. Enjoy the trip, have a conversation. And we were diverted around Berthoud, and we got back on I-25. All of a sudden it switched. And now we were going to be right on time. And we actually got down to Hampton and I-25, where this place was, and we were 10 minutes early. And we walked in and we just sat down. And my wife had gotten great seats, and we enjoyed the Denver Brass. Now,
What free indeed
guys,
feels like.
I could have ruined that.
Yeah.
But in this case, maybe the only time in my life, I died to myself. And as a result, it was like a resurrection. We had life. Now, this happens every day. And I think it's what we, as men of our age, want to learn about and want to communicate to those that aren't as further along in the process. And I think in that is life. Other than that, I don't feel very strongly about it. Yeah. Oh, I'm catching myself.
So isn't it interesting that Jesus, right, is having a conversation with these good Jews, and actually all the first century Christians were probably, most of them were good Jews, right? And he had some Gentiles sprinkled in, but
well, in the temple, he's in the temple. Yeah.
yeah. But so letting go, he wants them to let go a little bit, but he doesn't want to throw the baby out with the bath, right? He didn't say, I came to destroy this whole way of thinking, the law. He said, I came to fulfill it. But the problem is, so if we're going to let go, what are we going to hold on to?
Well, John, that's exactly what I was trying to say in my story. It's all about my rights, about being right, about perceptions, about it is what it is. I don't agree with it, but this is I'm not going to ruin it. And
maybe that's why.
And if we would allow life to happen to us, John, allow it to, rather than trying to control it. That's what I'm talking about.
I wonder if that's why they talk about in the churches having a group of elders. Somehow it takes time to beat that into you.
A lot of mistakes, eh, Bill?
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it is. Well, guys, we're gonna pick up here next week, and I've got 4 points I've derived from this, and we may move into the next section. I don't know, but man, oh man, I see this as so applicable to me. This blatant example of how disconnected their heads are with reality is me. And it's comforting to know just how patient Jesus is with everybody. Dave, yes.
Off subject, but before we go, congratulations and wonderful news on a home for Christ in the Rockies.
Oh yeah.
If
Did you
guys
get that?
haven't seen that newsletter yet, look forward to it. That's a tremendous thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I just got that out. Got final approval this morning, so I got it out this morning. So yeah. Thank you. Well, you guys have a good week, and we'll go ahead and we're going to meet next week. I was kind of wondering there for a minute because I'm actually going out to see my daughter, but I don't leave till later in the day, so we can meet next Wednesday. But boy, to me, this is really life-giving, exciting stuff, and hope you feel the same. So anyway, we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.